Okay, I've got a bit of a puzzle for you. We've got a beautiful, conserved English park, then a deadly blizzard in New Zealand, and a super violent gold rush at, like, the literal end of the world. Now, on the surface, these three stories, these three landscapes, seem like they're worlds apart, right? But what if they're all telling us the exact same thing about who we are? It's a fascinating connection. So let's dive in and see if we can piece this together.
All right, first up, I want you to picture this. We're in England's Lake District, and it is just stunningly beautiful. You've got these soaring mountains, they call them fells, and these super still, quiet lakes. I mean, for centuries, this is the place that has inspired poets, painters, all sorts of adventurers. It's a landscape that just screams peace, reflection, and real artistic freedom.
Okay, hold that peaceful image in your head, because now we're going to do a complete 180. We're jumping halfway across the world to New Zealand back in 1863. The scene? The Otago goldfields. And let me tell you, the reality here is anything but peaceful. This quote you're seeing, it's just harrowing. It's from a newspaper describing a gold seeker who could only listen as his friend, his mate, prayed to God right before freezing to death in a blizzard. I mean, wow, it's a brutal landscape that promised so much wealth, but man, it often just delivered death.
And for our third and final spot on this map, we're going all the way down, all the way to the southernmost tip of South America, Tierra del Fuego, which means the land of fire. And get this, in 1883, a French ship wrecks on the coast, and purely by accident, someone discovers gold. And just like that, bam, it triggers this sudden, explosive, and incredibly violent rush to what felt like the very end of the world. So here it is. This is our mystery, right? You've got a tranquil park, a deadly snowstorm, and this brutal grab for gold. Three landscapes, three totally different outcomes. But, and this is the key, they are all connected by this one powerful force. It's like a magnetic pull that certain places have on us, on our spirit. So what is that pull? And maybe more importantly, what happens to us when we decide to answer that call?
Okay, so let's start by digging into what drove people to these incredible and incredibly different places in the first place. When you really get down to it, it seems to boil down to two very different but, equally powerful human desires.
And you can see that contrast so clearly right here. On one side, you've got this pull of the wild, right? You've got people heading to the Lake District looking for inspiration, for freedom, for some kind of higher purpose. But on the other side, it's the pull of wealth. You've got prospectors flooding into Otago and Tierra del Fuego, all chasing the promise of gold, a quick fortune, a whole new life. It's like two sides of the very same coin, and that coin is human ambition.
And this quote, this just illustrates that choice perfectly. So there was this young guy, Chris Bonington, who, by the way, would go on to become a legendary Everest mountaineer. Anyway, he was working for a food company, selling margarine of all things. When he asked for some time off to go on an expedition, his boss basically said, "Son, you got to choose. It's either mountains or margarine." And, well, you can guess what he chose. He chose the mountains. And just like so many others in that part of the world, he put his passion way ahead of a normal, stable paycheck. So, people are drawn to these places. But what happens when they actually get there? I mean, they're miles and miles away from the rules, from the society they knew back home. They've got no choice. They have to adapt, they have to survive, and they have to build a whole new world literally from the ground up.
And in a place as brutal and unpredictable as the Otago goldfields, one particular social bond became absolutely critical. It was the idea of a mate. Now, we're not just talking about a buddy or a coworker here. No, a mate was someone you trusted with your actual life. You worked together, you lived together, you shared everything. It was a bond that was forged in the absolute toughest conditions, and it really became the bedrock of this new society they were building. So you start to see this kind of pattern emerge, right? It's like a three-step process for making a life at the edge of the world. Step one, you have to adapt to the extreme. And that could mean choosing to live in a cave, like this guy Milliken Dalton did in the Lake District, or it could mean figuring out how to survive a deadly blizzard in Otago. Step two, you build a community from nothing. And finally, step three, you have to forge these incredibly powerful new bonds, like mateship, to replace all the old rules and family ties you left behind.
But, this chase for freedom and fortune, it wasn't all heroic community building. There was a very real, very dark side to it all. The very same landscapes that held all this promise could just as easily become the stage for some incredible hardship, some brutal conflict, and real tragedy. And just look at how fast things went south in Tierra del Fuego. The gold rush just explodes in 1883, and it takes almost no time at all. Within just a few years, you have this guy, Julius Popper, leading expeditions that were, as the history books tell us, directly involved in killing the indigenous Selknam people. And then, poof, by 1906 it's basically over. Just a violent boom, a devastating bust, and a scar left on the land and its people that would never, ever heal.
And that human cost? It wasn't always about violence between people. Sometimes it was just people versus the environment. Back in Otago, in 1863, a single blizzard, one storm, killed 4 men. Those were the mites we were just talking about. It's just such a stark reminder of the brutal reality these guys were up against while they were out there chasing their fortunes. Conflict took on different forms, though. It wasn't always a physical fight. Take the artist Kurt Schwitters. He actually fled Nazi Germany and found a refuge in the Lake District. Why? Because the Nazis had labeled his art degenerate. So for him, the landscape wasn't a place of physical struggle against nature, it was a safe harbor, a place to escape a world of intense political persecution. His conflict was with an ideology, and this landscape was his sanctuary.
So that raises a really interesting question, doesn't it? How do we end up remembering these difficult histories? This quote here points out something fascinating about us. It says that in New Zealand, later histories blunted the memory of all that conflict. It's like the sharp, harsh edges of the gold rush, the death, the desperation, they got smoothed over. And the story got retold as the simple, heroic tale of community building. It really makes you think we kind of choose the stories we want to tell about our past.
And that really brings us to our final big question here. What's the lasting legacy of all this? When people and these powerful places collide, what's left behind? How are these 3 completely different landscapes remembered today?
I mean, this table just lays it all out, plain and simple. In the Lake District, you've got Beatrix Potter and her legacy. It's conservation, a beautiful, protected national park. Then you go to Otago, New Zealand. The legend is the digger, the mate, and it becomes this kind of contested national myth. And finally, Tierra del Fuego. The legacy of guys like Julius Popper is a really complicated one. It's tied to an economic boom, for sure, but it's also tied to the genocide of the Selknam people. I mean, 3 stories, 3 profoundly different endings.
And we really have to zoom in on the Beatrix Potter story because it's just incredible. So she takes the money she makes from her beloved kids' books, starting with A Tale of Peter Rabbit, and she uses it to buy up farms in the area. But here's the thing, she wasn't a developer trying to make a buck. She was a conservationist. Her whole goal was to protect the traditional landscape that she loved so much, and when she died, she bequeathed over 4,000 acres of land to the National Trust. That single act was absolutely crucial in creating the national park that we can all visit today.
Now, you couldn't get a more different legacy than the one in Tierra del Fuego. The gold rush definitely fueled economic growth, especially for some of the port cities, no doubt about it. But that growth came at an absolutely catastrophic, irreversible cost. The flood of miners, the violence, all of it contributed directly to the genocide of the Selknam people, the original inhabitants of that land.
So, where does that leave us? What's the big takeaway here? I think these 3 stories prove that landscapes aren't just pretty backdrops for our lives. They're active stages. They're the places where our biggest ambitions, whether it's for art or wealth or freedom, all play out. They shape us, and we in turn shape them. And we leave behind these legacies of preservation or myth or just straight-up destruction. And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. How do the stories we tell about our landscapes, the ones we live in right now, define not just our past, but who we are today?